Hello everyone, welcome back. The United States is celebrating another trade deal while the European Union is completely cornered yet again. So on Sunday, the United States and the European Union struck a last-minute trade deal that imposes a 15% U.S. tariff on most EU goods, which averts what could have been a quite brutal escalation of economic hostilities.
Mr. Trump, can you do better than a 15% tariff rate for the EU?
Better meaning lower?
Yeah.
No. Mr. President,
The deal was finalized after a rather awkward and quite tense at times face-to-face meeting between U.S. President Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. Nevertheless, despite the tone of that meeting, the deal does mark one of the most consequential trade agreements in recent years. Trump called it the biggest deal ever made, and as you may recall, just last week, he referred to his Japan deal as the biggest one ever. But you know what? I would actually agree with him here. The deal with the EU is indeed quite surprising, especially the fact that Ursula von der Leyen resembled a schoolgirl sitting next to Trump during that meeting, obediently nodding and smiling and delivering exactly what Trump wanted her to deliver.
We should not forget where we would have been on the 1st of August. We would have been at 30%. And it would have been much more difficult to get down now to the 15%. 15% is certainly a challenge for some, but we should not forget it keeps us the access to the American market.
And so at the end of the day, von der Leyen echoed Trump's sentiment, saying that the agreement would bring stability and predictability to global trade. But behind the smiles and these sound bites lies a more complex story, one of shifting alliances and political posturing. So let's break it down. The deal says a 15% baseline tariff on EU exports to the United States, significantly lower than the 30% rate that Trump had threatened just weeks earlier. While a 15% tariff still marks a significant hurdle for European exporters, it is a relief compared to the alternative. Trump had set a hard deadline of August the 1st to impose steeper tariffs unless an agreement was reached. And so in response, the EU had readied counter tariffs on $109 billion worth of American goods, and some member states were even prepared to use the bloc's most powerful trade weapon, the anti-coercion instrument, against the United States services and technology firms. So the standoff was theatrical, it was clearly posturing, but the stakes were still quite high. And so instead, over the weekend, the two sides actually stepped back from that edge as the EU delivered what Trump expected it to. In exchange for the US dialing down its tariff threats, the EU agreed to a sweeping package of multi-billion-dollar commitments. That includes $600 billion in direct investments into the United States economy and an agreement to purchase $750 billion worth of American energy and military equipment over the coming years. So, of course, the military-industrial complex was very much part of this deal. These are staggering numbers, and they do reflect just how eager Brussels is to de-escalate and to get Trump back on track, to get Trump back on the same page.
I want to thank President Trump personally for his personal commitment and leadership to achieve this breakthrough. He's a tough negotiator, but he is also a deal maker.
So let's remember that the EU's original goal was a 0-for-0 tariff deal. It didn't get that. The EU wanted no barriers, no new taxes, just open trade between partners. From that perspective, accepting a 15% tariff feels like a retreat, and it is a retreat. This is a defeat. And it is coupled with multi-billion-dollar commitments made literally by failing economies. especially when you consider that steel and aluminum remains excluded from this deal, which is still subject to Trump's harsh 50% global tariff. Now, pharmaceuticals are also carved out of this deal with no new access or relief on either side. So why did Europe accept this deal?
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal. So we keep it on the table. But we are also prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests.
Well, it accepted the deal because the alternative was worse, and it couldn't afford not to accept it given its financial and economic position, its financial and economic decline, that is, both of which are, of course, Europe's own fault for giving up its political and economic sovereignty. The EU already faces economic headwinds, slowing growth, rising energy costs, and internal political divisions. A full-blown trade war with the United States, its largest non-EU trading partner, could have been catastrophic, and it couldn't afford it. So Trump's hardball tactics, though controversial, forced the EU into a corner, and he knew that it would. He knew that he would win. This isn't, of course, the first time that the Trump administration has flexed its muscle in global trade in recent weeks. Deals with Japan, with Indonesia, Vietnam, and Britain have followed a very similar pattern. Tariff threats, then aggressive deadlines, and last-minute concessions. Trump even once promised 90 deals in 90 days. Of course, that was quite ambitious, an ambitious goal that he wasn't, of course, going to meet, and he knew that. He hasn't met it, but his scattergun approach has produced results nonetheless. Trump's main complaint with the EU has always been the United States trade deficit, which hit $235 billion in 2024 for goods alone, that is excluding services. His long claim that the European Union was formed to screw the United States, and that is his own words, and he's shown little patience for their explanations, like the fact that the United States runs a surplus in services with Europe, which partially balances the books. That was not taken into consideration to Trump. That didn't matter. Still, numbers aside, the broader trend is quite clear. Trump wants to reshape the global economy. He wants allies to pay more for defense, to buy more American goods, especially weapons, especially arms, and he wants his allies to invest more in U.S. infrastructure. Sunday's deal checks all three boxes. Ursula was there smiling politely, and frankly, the meeting was very uncomfortable to watch. If you watch the clips, I think you would agree. It was extremely awkward, and it was quite uncomfortable to even listen to Trump's words and to see how Ursula reacts to them. By the way, the location of the meeting wasn't an accident either. Trump hosted von der Leyen not in Washington this time, but at his golf course in Scotland's western coast. The optics were unmistakable. A president sitting in his own domain, closing a deal on his terms. And so for his supporters, it is classic Trump. Business first, symbolism second. For his critics, however, it's just more theater from a leader who blurs the lines between personal empire, if you will, and national policy. But there's another layer to this story, one that reaches beyond tariffs and beyond trade deficits. This deal could signal a realignment of transatlantic relations. The EU may have given a substantial amount of ground. Trump continues to push his vision of a reordered global economy. His supporters see him as a tough negotiator, which he clearly is, and his supporters see him as someone who is finally making allies pay their fair share. At the same time, his critics see a president who's destabilizing the global order for short-term wins. Whichever side you're on, this much is clear. Sunday's deal was a high-stakes gamble that looks like a victory for Trump and a considerable big loss for the EU and, frankly, any U.S. ally. The underlying tensions remain, and as the world watches, one question lingers. What happens the next time that Trump raises the stakes? Because if history is any guide at all for us, there will be a next time. How will the allies, how will the world react? That remains to be seen. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for joining me. If you found this quick breakdown helpful, hit like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the deal and on the trade policy. I would love to hear from you. Make sure that you are subscribed on Substack and Patreon. I would love to see you there as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Take care.